In CoverHD, there's not a way to copy an individual SoapNote macro or duplicate a SoapNote macro tab. So what you have to do is essentially copy and paste the contents of that SoapNote macro. So what you need to do is have two tabs of CoverHD open side by side, and you need to go to where your SoapNote macros live. So for most people, that's going to be at your system level. But if you're using location-specific macros, you would navigate there. So if I'm using system level macros, I would go to my system dashboard, system settings, SOAP macros. If you are an individual office, you should be using macros at the system level. And if you see this message up here, you're currently using a managed macro set. That means you are using a macro set that you cannot edit. So what you do have to do is copy those macros into your system so that you can edit them. Copying and pasting is considered editing. If you want to use the macros that are already there, you would hit click here to copy macros into your system to edit. If I click here to switch to custom macros, that would simply provide you a new blank page so that you can create your own macros from scratch. So again, this would wipe out everything and you would be starting from scratch. This button would copy the macros so that you can edit them. I'm going to click on this button. This message is telling me that I'm disconnecting from the Manage Macro set, which means if there are any updates made to the Manage Macro set, you're losing those updates because you're choosing to create your own system-specific macros. I'm going to click yes. Now I am on my own custom macros. So if I look here at the top right, it's telling me I'm using my own custom macros. So I can copy and paste, I can edit, I can create my own macros now. If you are using location-specific macros, you would log into your live location, settings, initial setup, SOAP macros. This is telling me I'm currently using macros at the system level. So that's okay. If I'm supposed to be using system level macros, then I would just leave it there, and all edits need to be done at the system level. But say I'm part of a multi-location network and we're allowed to use our own location-specific macros, then you might be using your own location-specific macros, and it would tell you up here that you're using location-specific macros. But regardless, if you're using system macros or location-specific macros, you need to go to that macro dashboard. I'm going to be using the system level macros as an example. Let's say I want to copy everything that's in the contents of this macro and create another one. There's not a way to duplicate this macro, so what I do have to do is copy and paste the contents. Do not just select everything in the text box and copy. What will happen is you will lose the functionality of these advanced macros. So anything that's in blue text or a blue box. What you have to do is click switch to code view, and this is the contents that you will copy. This is the coding and the functionality that you're wanting. So if I'm wanting to copy and recreate this macro, I would go into my second tab and open the macro button that I want to paste everything into. And so I'm going to be bouncing it back and forth between the two tabs. I can copy the name, or I can change the name if I want to create a different name for this button. Copy the color, or select a different color if I want to. Look at the behavior. Do I want to keep the behavior the same or change it? Look at line options. Do I want to keep the behavior the same or change it? Output options. Do I want to keep the behavior the same or change it? And default behaviors. Do I want to keep it the same or change it? On the macro that I want to copy, I've already clicked switch to code view, and now I'm going to click into the text box, and I'm going to copy everything. I can either drag and highlight everything, or I can hit Command A, and I'll copy all the contents in the text box. Now I'm going to copy that contents, click over to my second tab of CoverHD, my pasting tab, as you can call it. click into the text box, click paste. Here you will see the code view. Now I just want to toggle the switch to code view. I'm going to click it once so it formats it into code view again. And then I'm going to click a second time and go switch to macro view, just so we can see the functionality that we want. So after I paste, I hit this button twice to get it back into the format that I can read. And then I would hit save. At that point, I have copied my macro. The macro that I just copied was called a regular macro, meaning there's only one option. I want to go over how you copy and paste a list macro. I'm going to use this as an example, and up here under type you can see it's a list macro. The process is essentially the same, but I have to copy each individual list option within this one macro in order to copy the entire macro. So again, I'm going to click over into my pasting tab. I'm going to click on the open space where I want to paste this macro. Under type, I'm going to select list, and then I'm going to start copying and pasting. So I'm going to get to my first tab option in my list. I'm going to copy the list item label, paste that here, click switch to code view, highlight everything in the text box and copy, paste, and then hit toggle, toggle. Okay, I've copied the first tab in my list. Now I need to copy the other tabs. You can see here on this list macro, I have 3 options. So on my pasting tab of ChirHD, I'm going to click on this plus sign and do the same process over again. So now I click over to my second tab option, copy the name, switch to code view, highlight everything and copy, paste. I'm going to hit this button twice to toggle back to macro view. And now my second list item is done. And now I'm just going to copy the third, doing the same thing. Once I have copied and pasted over every tab in that macro, all I have to do is scroll down and hit save. So if you're copying and pasting SoapNote macros, when you click into the macro button, that first option where it says type, pay attention to if it says regular or list. Regular, then it's kind of a one and done copy and paste. If it says list, then just keep in mind you are going to have to copy and paste each tab within this one macro. So it's just a few more steps. At the beginning, I said that we also don't have a way to duplicate an entire SoapNote macro tab. So on your SoapNote macro screen, you can have multiple tabs. If I want to copy every macro that is on a tab, I have to copy and paste each individual macro. So you would end up adding a new tab and then pasting onto that tab as you're copying and pasting. So unfortunately, there isn't a duplicate option. You would have to copy and paste each individual macro.